Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to On the Town with Tanya. It's episode 5. Can you believe it? If you can, do me a favor, share and hit the like and subscribe button. We are committed to adding value to lives in 2026. Today's guest is a reinvention strategist. It's Reinvention Sunday, guys. Today's guest is a builder, a starter, and a certified I didn't quit, I pivoted kind of woman. She's the author of Be Happy 10 Steps for Creating a Happy Life, a real look at what it takes to build something when nobody's handing you a map. She is also the creator of sip-serviceprovider, lovable app, where she helps people stop waiting for permission and start again on their own terms. She's living proof that starting over isn't failure. It's actually a strategy. I want you guys to do me a favor. Please help me welcome the lovely, fantastic Sophia Cousins. Hey.
Oh, hi, everyone.
Hey, how are you?
Nice to be
There
on
you
your
go.
show. Hi, Tanya.
Yay. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. Wow, welcome. And thank you again for being a guest. Before we get into your resume, who you were before the titles and the book and she doing big things now. I want to know what was that? What were you doing before all that?
Oh, so that's always an interesting question, finding out what I call my backstory. So with me, to cut it short, because people know me really well, I'm a little bit of a storyteller. I'm not going to go into a whole long story. So I have, gone through different sorts of pivots, changes and resets in life. I started off my career after graduating from university with a law degree, many years ago, and I went into the corporate world, what I sometimes refer to as the corporate arena. So I, ticked the boxes, which a lot of reviews would relate to, for example, like what you're told from when you're younger, have a good foundation, which is having a good education. Although I always see education as just a foundation block. It's not the be all to everything. And what I mean by that is it's to do with what do you do with this information which you're given, a little bit like AI, for example, if I bring it back to modern day times. So what I did is I worked in corporate, did really well, went up the corporate ladder, but there's always this niggling part of me thinking, is this all it is? Do I really want to be like a chief financial officer? And I always knew the answer was no. And then what happened is with my last ever permanent job, which was years and years ago, I was made redundant. I had that change kind of like forced on me, which does happen. We can't plan, what's going to happen. And then it was an opportunity for me to reevaluate. And then I decided to go traveling, and I went to Canada for 2 months. And that's where I realized, I do love traveling. So I had a bit of a travel bug, going back years back. And then when I returned back to the UK, I decided, why don't I become a consultant? And I think it's one of the best things I did because it gave me the opportunity to work in different industry sectors. I then became like the trending word, although it's not trending because I think people call it multifaceted.
Right.
I did different things. So I worked on projects, worked as a project manager, retrained and did a teaching qualification. I moved and lived in the Netherlands. I went there. I knew no one at all. And I left my partner of the time, my family and friends in the UK. And that was a great experience because although it didn't go according to plan, one of the things I would say is when you go out of your comfort zone, and especially when you're traveling and going in a different environment, you really learn how to adapt to different sorts of situations. So one of the things I've learned along the way is that life has a way of throwing curveballs at you sometimes.
All the
But
time.
yeah, the biggest lesson is when you kind of like reset and you come back, stronger. And it's a bit like Madonna, like an icon. She's always been reinventing herself. When you look at her, if I take like a popular artist, for example, life is all about different sorts of resets. You get up again and start over. My late dad always used to say, never give up.
Exactly. Never, ever give up. Never. Well, you made Be Happy, the 10 steps. Let me see if I can find it. So that's why people can see exactly what I'm talking about. You made this fabulous book. Let's see. Here we go.
Oh, there it is, the smiley faces.
Yes, there she is. And so what made you say, let me tell the truth, not just the Instagram version?
Yeah, I think with all of us, we all have a story, in us, even if we might not think that we're writers. And at the time I was going, it's an interesting time of my life because I returned back to UK. It's another trip. It's not the Netherlands one. And I'm like rebuilding my life. And I've always been, as I mentioned early on, a storyteller. And I always like to tell things as it is. And I think one way to connect to people is by telling your story, not sharing like just the glossy parts, which we see like in social media. And it makes it relatable. It shows how life is, how you have vulnerability. So I believe it's best, to, share, the good and the bad. And with Be Happy book, I probably will do maybe another edition of that in the future to do with, all feelings are valid, even the crap ones, because that's the reality of life. Is we have these ups and downs. And I'm from that sort of generation, similar to you, Tanya, like Gen X, where we sort of like around where you had encyclopedias and then you had internet. So it's a bit different to how things are, where you have like the mobile phone and everything's like instant. And I think that's what's caused people to get like anxiety type of related, problems, like how everything has to be done now. And that in reality is that's not how life is. You go through, ups and downs, as I said, and it's all about, how, what can you, it's to do with how you react to things, and knowing that you only could control more your response, so how you're going to deal with it, how you could reframe it too as well. But a big thing I always say to viewers and listeners is that it's okay, to feel the low feelings, because that's the human thing. With Setton, that, this person, he came up to me, was really rude. I've never encouraged people to dumb down their feelings, because it doesn't help at all, because things have a way of coming back to haunt you. So that's why it's always good to, go through those feelings, have that space, to talk to someone. It could be your friend, or it could be someone, professional, someone neutral if you don't feel comfortable talking. And circling back to that previous question you asked me about sharing your real life, of course, online, remember, it's a safety. You don't have to share every single thing with people, because, once it's out there, it's out, out there online, and people could clone and, create, stuff online. So it's okay to share, but that's one of the warnings I would say to people, in terms of when you are feeling really vulnerable. I recommend, if you do feel really, really low, kind of like sit on it, see if you could talk to someone who you feel safe with. Or sometimes it's okay to share, publicly, because then you feel less alone. And this is the great thing I've always loved about storytelling, is that it shows you that you are not alone. There's someone outside who, who's gone through something similar.
Exactly. Well, can you be honest? So like you have been so far, what was the very first moment when you realized that like, oh my goodness, I might be building something really real here that can help people?
Yeah, so one moment which pops to mind is when I had my limited series podcast show, which was the Go Getter Me. So
Mhm.
I interviewed this guy in America. Oh gosh, I forgot his first name, but I know that he had the goss hair. He was this American chef. If you Google Bionic Chef,
Mhm.
then you'll find him. So I asked him to come onto my show, and it was a bit like, he was a bit reluctant, and then he finally appeared on the show. And what was really amazing is the moment when he turned around and he says, "Thank you, Sophia, for inviting me and being persistent with me," because he goes, "My story, it doesn't matter if one person listened, but this, someone will need to hear this message." So with this guy, he lost his hand in an accident, and then
Oh,
later he found out he had cancer.
ah,
And then when he was growing up, people would say, "You're not going to amount to anything at all." But he
mm,
had that sort of like determination, that visualization. And then
mhm.
what's interesting with him is he worked with top celebrities, models, which you're probably familiar with that sector, Tanya, yourself, because really what you were a model and you hanged around people like a man and stuff like that. A little bit like a love fest going on views there. I tell you, has an interesting story. And one of the things he said is that a lot of them were unhappy. Not
Mhm.
all of them, but he said basically everyone, has their own issues. So it's good to hear these stories
It
that,
is. It's powerful. And it's inspirational to hear other people's stories. So, and then for him to be a top chef and he lost a hand and
yeah,
had cancer, there like it makes us say there are no excuses. Like really,
yeah,
there's no excuses, only solutions, right?
yeah,
Uh,
that's true.
yeah, yeah, which is why I like what you're doing. What so just shifting a little bit, what was harder, starting the company or unlearning everything you were ever taught about how success is supposed to look?
That's a really good question, because I remember when I was really early on, so this is going back more than 10 years or 15 years ago, when I got into the lifestyle and wellness type of arena. I
Mhm.
remember going to attending lots of seminars, studying, and then I would, write these articles, and then I had people sending me messages, and, it felt good that it was having a positive impact. And then I went through a phase where I was like the shouting guru saying, you need to do this. But one of the biggest lessons I've learned is how life is a continuous learning journey. It's actually one of my favorite quotes I've had for years. So you're always evolving all the time. So what you
Absolutely.
think in terms of belief was a belief, you sort of like question and think, oh, this is, not true, this is not right. And talk about success.
Mhm.
One of the things, as I've evolved and, gone through different experiences, is it's personable, to the individual, to yourself.
Mhm.
And I always recommend with people who work with me, or even in conversations, that you need to come back to yourself. And what I mean by this is, ask yourself, what's really important to me?
Mhm.
Because sometimes the easiest questions, you might think the simplest questions are very, or actually the difficult ones, because what happens is no matter our background, is we, start off, our life being babies, children, excited, thinking the world's the limit, and we
Mhm.
don't think about limitations. But then what happens is we kind of like become indoctrinated or have impressed by different values, like our parents.
Mhm.
Like for example, I give you one. It just popped into my head. I'm not hungry, by the way, everyone. But I remember my mum always used to have a thing about, to do with food, that you need to dampen the food before you throw it away, or, some sort of custom. So what I'm talking about is customs. For example, how people might have a bacon tin and they cut the edges so it's round, and then people ask you, why do you do that when you can have a round tin? So sometimes we have these things sort of like imprinted into us, like whose value is it? A bit like that game or that TV show, whose line is it? So
Right.
you need to ask yourself that question, because sometimes you follow these principles, you don't realize it's people's, values, which might not really be valid to you at all because you're a different individual, or maybe times have changed, or maybe it could be people's fear, projecting. And I find that a lot, especially to do with people want to change careers or
Yes.
maybe go traveling, and someone says, oh, it's not safe to do that. Because I had a situation about around Christmas time. I was in the bookstore, bumped into someone I know, and then this 90-year-old goes, oh, it's not safe to solo travel. And I thought, wow, that's not, that's an inaccurate truth. Where did she get that, that fear from? It's probably, fed, to her. So that's
Well,
the question.
I'm guilty of saying that to some
Yeah.
young people sometimes, depending on where they say they're going. If they're going to
Yeah.
Texas, it's not safe. If they're going to, depends on where you're going. So
yeah, it does.
I'm guilty, but not by
Yeah.
killing your dream. It's more by way of let's go with caution because there's a lot of things going on right now with us. That's all. That's all.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on the travel one, because I do advise people in solo travel. So I always say be safe, but going back to values is that we get influence in different ways, and success. It could be, oh, you should take this career path, and then you realize, you know what, I don't really like doing this at all. And it's interesting how we are influenced a lot about our parents. So that's why it's good to do your values, figure out, what's important to me. Yes. And then talking about values, another one I would add as an addendum there is in terms of priorities, you've got this phrase. So Tanya, have you heard of the phrase of people saying you can have it all, which sometimes people, throw out a lot? You must have heard of that phrase, that expression. So yeah. I think people get that wrong. Is the fact is, we have like a limited, amount of time, to do things in a day. And I say, once you know what your values are, a set that, for example, if we're looking at a list of goals you want to achieve, I always say try to have fewer goals and then prioritize things. So this might be the season where I might decide, okay, I'm just going to be focusing on creating tools, doing apps, to do my business. And then next year I might decide, you know what, I want to sit out and spend 3 months, traveling, and that's totally fine. So what I'm trying to say is our priorities change over time, and what might be important to you in one point in time might be different. But core values, it's important to go back to that, because it's a bit like a filter. It helps you making decisions.
Yes, especially, I think balance is key too. So you can't just put all your eggs in one basket, right? You have to have as I say, you have to have it so that you keep your sanity, but you're following your dream and you're following what the universe wants you to do, which was to enjoy everything, right?
Yes.
It's a fine line, but you have to take the risk first.
Yeah, it's true.
Yourself.
Yeah, I agree with you, because you don't want to come to the end of your life and have regrets. So I always say, just do it. Like the Nike ad. Was it the 80s or 90s? I think it was the 80s to early 90s. Maybe just do it.
Nike wrote that. That's their phrase. Just do it.
Yeah,
which is the best saying probably ever. I think.
It is. Just do it. It's a bit like when I decided to do paragliding. I just did it. I didn't think too much. The other day I was thinking, as I was going up, ascending a mountain, I was thinking, what was I thinking?
Right.
I was the last one to take off.
Oh my God.
The wind direction, and I thought, typical. Why would that happen to me? But it was a great experience, doing paragliding, and it made me think.
Faced your biggest fear.
Yeah. Sorry.
You face one of your biggest fears. Like that's everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And climbing the mountain was hard. Yeah. For the first time.
Well, Tony Robbins talks about that. He says, oh, whatever you're scared of, do it. I was like, wow. Well, we got a lot of problems if we do that. But I get what he's saying. You have to sometimes just be like, well, what's your biggest fear? Failure? Okay. So do it and fail a few times.
Yeah.
You'll be like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Right? It's worse than that. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, I tell you, we have to face our fears, and we have to face them head on, and we have to find what our strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah, I agree with you, because of course we're not good at everything, and it's good to understand what your weaknesses are, because you could get support or you could collaborate with people. I like the idea of collaborating. And going back to my corporate days when I was doing project management, I would, one of the first things I do in the first week or two is I would analyze, see, how does this organization work? Who's the more tech person? And then I would sort of like blend it, together.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, using your skills from that to transition into whatever else is next. Because a lot of times I think we all have these extra set of skills and talents in whatever we're doing now, and they actually could translate to whatever we want to be doing. That's just us doing it, but we don't even take time to assess that or see what those things are, so we can transfer them to something for ourselves.
No, you're right. We all have transferable skills for doing things, and then you're right. Sometimes we don't realise what our strengths are, and this is where you could ask people who about, okay, what's my strength, or think about what are the questions that people ask you about all the time, things that just comes naturally to you. So I'm kind of like giving people a bit of hints, in terms of what they could do.
Right.
When they're thinking about maybe side hustles, for example.
Yes. What are your gifts and how can they translate? Which is what I love about your app. You created a sip-serviceprovider lovable app.
Yes.
What were you trying to solve that nobody else was talking about? Can you tell us about it?
Okay, so the SIP tool, which Tanya has mentioned, is my Reinvention navigator tool. So what happened is I've always been a little bit of a geek. I like learning new things, and I find tech interesting. Yes, it's got good and bad, with everything. And one of my mentors, when I was learning more about the things which you could do with AI, and I always say, as a disclaimer to everyone, always try to aim to use it in an ethical type of way. You're a human being, and that's a good, but anyway, I'm going to pause there and continue. So one of my really good mentors was saying that before you put a product out to market, create something which you find useful in your day to day. So what I did is I thought, wouldn't it be cool to have a tool where I could like bounce off ideas, or especially to do with, doing different sorts of pivots in both life and work and every day. And that's how I came up with the idea. And then on a more sentimental value, it was because I lost, almost 3 years ago, a really good, friend who was like my creative partner. And I say that he's like my co-producer. And, so that's a sentimental part of the story. So I thought, why don't I create this tool, which, a little bit like that human being, but not identical. So I created Reinvention Navigator to help people with different pivots. And I fed it to behave a certain way, look at things, not give back, like generic results, look deeper. So think a bit like me. So I sometimes joke, which one is smarter, my tool or me, So I do like to play against each other. So Reinvention Navigator, it's like it's a support system. So say, for example, if you say, okay, I'm in America, I'm X age, I got X years to retire. What are the options which I can do? This is my interest. And then what I've done on my tours, I've even included something to do with calculating, your financial freedom number 2 as well. So it's not a financial advisor. So that's a disclaimer, everyone. But I add these sort of things because I know that with people in a certain age group, for example, they look in, it's always good. I always say to look.
And I make $1 million in my last 2 years left. Right.
Yeah. No. Sorry, Tanya, you go.
I was making a joke. Like, can I make $1 million in my last 3 years left or whatever? So
yeah. You never know, maybe. Anything's possible. Because look at what's happened with tech, with years of AI and everything. If AI's been around, longer.
I know. I'll go into that one. Yeah, I'll go into that one. But I was more referring to people like when you say financial and people who are a little bit up 50 plus, the first thing we ask is like, okay, so what do you need to make by retirement if you that you don't already have in pension or whatever?
Yeah.
So that was where that question would come up. Like,
Yeah.
can I take 50,000 and invest it and make 5 million? Like, what I'm making that up, but it's
Yeah.
it's just a thought. But we do think about those things.
Yeah.
Was there ever a moment you almost quit? Like, I mean, for real, quit, not just the cute, I'm tired, quit, right?
Hmm. Yeah, so when you say quitting, there are things which I've tried and tested. So one of the things about me is I like to, trial and error. It's like another one of my life philosophies. And it's natural, it's perfectly okay because that's what life is about. Because remember, we were talking about just do it. So the reality is some things might not work according to plan. Some might, exceed your expectations, or some you think, you know what, this is not for me, and that's okay. So
Right.
there have been times in my life where I have started or done a venture. So for example, years ago, going back to when I was in the corporate arena,
Mhm.
um, I thought, would it be interesting to set up a business selling accessories? And I did. But then
Mhm.
it, didn't work out really well. But I learned, my lesson from that. And
Mhm.
then I also had a tuition business years ago, and then it was going well because I had clients, I had people working for me, and then it came a day when I was delivering online tuition. I was sitting in the Caribbean, so I was doing the whole remote stuff before it became trendy. So this is going back to 2013,
Wow.
and halfway through the session, I was thinking, I don't really enjoy this at all. I feel bored, and I was really time watching, and I knew that was a warning sign, and I did end up closing, down that business.
Yeah.
And I did learn some really good lessons from it. So, for
Mhm.
example, not to make people go off to sleep here. I learned things, valuable lessons in terms of how to look at your numbers, pricing and costing. So, for example, what happens is when you're an employer, when you've been an employer and then you become your own boss or providing a service, you could get trapped into thinking the 9 to 5 mentality, like the hourly. But then when you're a consultant, you have to think about things. For example, if I go and see a client, then that's like 1 hour that way, 1 hour back, and preparation, so you lose time too as well. And also doing preparation, that's time. I remember when I did teaching years and years ago, I mean, when I was doing academic teaching, I
Mhm.
learned that for every hour when I'm showing up in a classroom, it actually meant 2 hours, because
Right.
I was doing preparation.
Yeah.
So
Prep.
you learn things. So I think it's a good, I see it's a learning curve,
Yes.
quitting, but it's good to understand when something's not right for you. And then
Mm.
this circles back to that question in terms of values, but I go a bit deeper, being honest with yourself. What is it that you want? Because
Yes.
sometimes we might not realize we're going on, what we think we should do. I call it uditis. It's
Mm.
a phrase I came up with, which means should have, could have, would have. You see how it writes.
Right.
Uditis. If you're in that stream and you know that you need to take it a bit, back in to yourself.
Mm. Well, taking the risk, number one, is the most important. Number two, being able to laugh at yourself is very
Mhm.
important. And number three, just realizing that, okay, this is not what I want to do next. And recovering and then going to the next thing. Most people stop and say, well, I did horrible, I failed, and that's
Mhm.
it. Instead of saying, okay, we learned lessons on that one. I made a couple of dollars. Let's go to the next thing. The next thing is probably the next thing that might be the big thing.
Yeah, that's true. And Tanya, when we think about most successful people we hear in the world, and I have to pause there because I'm thinking about what's happened in our current climate of,
Mm,
what's,
mm.
just let me think about someone who's very successful and, done really well.
Oh, Ryan Coogler.
Yeah, I was thinking about talk about the landscape, what's happening with Epstein. I said it, the E word, how you keep find out who's done it. I just think of someone, but you know what I mean. So with a lot of people, successful people, if you ask them the question, a majority of them, 100% of them, have had some sort of failure. So the point I'm trying to make is it shouldn't deter you at all. It's a bit like that old adage, that saying that when you're learning to ride a bike, you might fall off a few times, but then you get the swing of it, and it's a skill which you don't forget at all. So you don't like. You just keep going, dust yourself off. Because if you have like a little toddler or who falls over, would you tell them just not to walk or try again? You wouldn't at all. So you need to you need to keep going as a fact. Yeah. So
no, it is in that failure that you find your actual success.
Yeah, it's true, and sometimes how you look at failure, it's a bit like that saying, a rejection is a redirection.
Exactly.
I'm doing like different framing, or it's like a pivot.
That's
when I returned back to the UK, when I was in the Netherlands, I ended up retraining and going into teaching, and then that's actually the time when I got into the writing of Sophia World. I wonder, if I didn't come back to the UK, would I've done, Sophia World, done my my brand, writing, guest writing, and publications. So, so you see, there's always like a rainbow or yeah, and I haven't taken anything tonight to keep myself alert. I'm just keeping people interested. I was saying keywords. Only kidding. Yeah.
Well, so we talk about age a lot. How did your age, life experience, and your receipts help you in business in ways that your younger self couldn't have pulled it all off?
Yeah, I think age is a great thing because by going through different experiences, so we make mistakes, we learn from them. It's a bit like driving. So if I compare myself to when I was learning to drive now, years ago to now I could, drive on the other side of the road. Like in America, you drive on the right. In the UK, we drive on the left. So I've driven in America, by the way. I've driven different countries, but what I try to say is it's good for us to go through different life experiences. And in a way, I used to be a bit thinking, oh, I don't want to get old or be a bit scared of it. But I think it's great because as I've gotten older, I realise that I've become more understanding. So, for example, when you meet someone who says something strange or ridiculous,
right?
I'd probably react differently to how I would have when I was, younger. So I think, okay, this person, thinks this way or has this viewpoint because they only had this certain X amount of experience.
Exactly.
And I would say, as a theme which I keep saying about how life's a continuous learning journey, is I'm old enough and wise enough to know I don't know it all. So I always like to have that saying. So I always say to people, always keep an open mind. And even I learned stuff from my young, nieces, for example. So always be open to learning, I would say. But age is good because it doesn't necessarily mean wisdom, because you get people who do really ridiculous things. I can't say that sometimes, but it's good having experience because you can navigate, how to deal with it, and then you know how to deal with people's behaviors. And then also another thing to highlight too as well is, let's take relations, for example. There might have been things which you should have tolerated when you were younger, or, being a negative one. And then you think, wow, I deserve, I'm worthy. Do you see what I mean? So that's like, a theme which is important too as well.
Yes.
So I would say to people, be gentle on yourself. Don't beat yourself up for what's happened in the past. Even if you think, oh, why did I let this happen? Because you did what you thought was best at the time.
Exactly. Very important. And I think, with age, some people do not have wisdom just because they age. So let's get that straight. We can look at a lot of MAGA and say that, but so it doesn't mean just because you got older that you're going to be wise. But in usual terms, if you've lived your life and your best life, you should gain wisdom with that life. So go figure. But
Yeah,
speaking of people over 50 often hear startup, right? And they
yeah.
think hoodies and 22-year-olds.
Mm.
What what do we bring to the table that they don't?
Yeah, so what we bring again is we bring our life experiences, what you mentioned early on, Tanya, about transferable skills,
Mhm,
able to adjust to different situations.
mhm,
With a lot of us, we learn about patience, thing which I just mentioned,
mhm.
how things don't happen just like that. It takes, sometimes it takes time. Yeah, and that's something you can't get is experience. Because think about the driver.
Mhm.
So, for example, if you were driving in bad weather and it's very snowy, and then you had like a learner who only got their license, let's say 3 months ago, and then
Mhm.
someone who's been driving for 30 years, and you have to go up this mountain, which driver would you choose?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
you get the one who's more experienced. So you do have value to bring.
yep.
Nothing beats experience. Although now you have like cars which will be driven, by robots. Although I'm a bit nervous about
Yeah, we
that.
wouldn't do that.
I know it's
I
happening
don't
in the
think I'll
world,
be doing that.
self-drive cars.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't know, but it makes me nervous. A robot driving me.
It makes me nervous. Not going to
Yeah.
happen. And especially since I think about, remember when, well, you wasn't there when we were in New York. There was a eastern power outage, and the whole east side went black.
Mhm.
Imagine if you're in a Tesla, what that means.
Yeah.
Anyway, we won't think about that, but I wouldn't, I wouldn't drive them anyway, because I do think that feeds the beast beyond beast level. A lot of people in Congo are dying in my opinion, because of that. So I wouldn't feed that beast, but I wouldn't ride one anyway. So that's just
Mhm.
me. What's the one mistake you made early on that
Yeah.
still makes you laugh or shake your head real slow?
Oh, that's a really good question. I feel like I should have thought about it. So you talk about business or
Yeah.
life or work?
Business and life. Business and life, because you're starting over again. If you started over multiple times, and most people
Mhm.
would be like, I'm supposed to get this right in my 20s. And then they say, no, I'm supposed to get it right in my 30s, no, in my 40s. But you're like, whenever I feel like doing, that's what I'm going to do. So at what point did you look back and laugh and say, oh, yeah, I probably could have did that different, but I'm still going to laugh anyway?
Yeah, there's quite a bit of stories. So, for example, in my travel story, I remember this is a bit. I remember leaving the UK, selling all my stuff and my car,
I remember you telling me.
and thinking, oh, I'm going to end up in this country. And then I ended up going somewhere else to begin with. And then money, sort of like, you know, I didn't have as much money as ideally as I wanted to. And I felt a bit vulnerable in terms of that situation, but I did manage to make it work. And then I did return to the UK. This is like years and years ago. But I think what happened in this situation, it was more to do with why I decided to leave. So it was after going through a really horrific time, and what I realized for that whole situation is not to do things in haste, because you kind of like repent to leisure. That's the phrase my mum used to say. So don't rush when you do things or come from a very sort of like emotional side. But I wouldn't say that it was a big mistake, because I don't look at life that way. Yes, for example, I could say in business, work, and relationships, I think, why did I, for example, date this person, or why did I do this? But
Mhm.
I've always seen like the light at the end of the tunnel, and I've grown from that experience. So I would say I'm not really big on the home mistakes thing. Do you see what I mean? I'm not saying
Right.
I haven't done things which I thought, wow, why did I do this? But I think it's all to do with how you frame things.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, so maybe I'm thinking it for. I know you didn't ask me what my regret is, but I think probably that's how my mind was responding, a regret. But yes, we do make mistakes, but I don't look at it like that. I don't really dwell on it too much. I try to learn from it. But to give people a tip on that, because now examples come up with me in terms of a partnership I had years ago with an ex-friend, and the ex-friend will probably tell you, what happened to it. So I remember years ago I went into a partnership with a friend, didn't work out really well. And I was very angry afterwards because I lost, lots of money. And then it was about 6 months later, I was sitting in London. I can remember it. I was attending a conference, and then it just clicked to me then and there that how I held responsibility for the situation. And I realized I wasn't valuing myself.
Right.
And that's part of the reason why things sort of like fell apart and the person was taken advantage. And then that was seemed like a mistake, 6 months. It wasn't really nice what happened. It was a really good learning point for me, in terms of a lesson, which is I needed to realize I need to realize that I was, I give value, what I add, etc. So I would say that's a big tip for your audience, is that to, going back to what I said earlier, not to beat yourself up. And it's good, what I said, all feelings are valid, because I did, shift. And from that experience, I ended up writing an article. An interesting thing is it was called Yellow. And yellow, it's usually like a positive color, but I got inspired by the TV show Homeland, where it talked about the stages of grief and color codes. So you could tell I like watching TV shows and dialogue, etc., like that. So yeah, I hope that was a good answer. There's a way I did swing, but that came to my mind, that home incident where I did feel anger, and then I realized that, hey, what was my position in it? I'm not saying that people don't do things which are wrong, and I'm not trying to take that away, because we all have responsibility, but it's also good to see, okay, what could I learn to as well from this situation?
Right. Exactly. And again, there are no mistakes. There's only, like you said, shifts.
Yeah, it's like shifts as a learning. Yeah, mistake is okay, but I think maybe for some reason I was thinking about regrets when you were saying about most of mistakes.
Yes. No, regrets even. They're really, I mean, in reality, we might have some at first, because of course you get mad, you get sad, you get whatever first. That's normal human reaction. But when you look back, if there was growth, then you really can't have a regret, because you wouldn't be where you are now if you did have one.
Yeah, and then have you noticed?
That means you're going to take it all back, and you don't want what you have now. To me,
it's true. And have you noticed that we sometimes go for dark periods, and then it makes us appreciate things much more too as well? And this could be even with relationships too as well. People in our life, or maybe things we have, like some people who might have lost their house. Just using that as an example, you appreciate things more.
This is called the human experience. That's what I say.
Yeah,
none of us are escaping. We're not. No one's escaping. It's how you manage it and what do you do. That's why, excuse me, what you do is clever, because you came up with a solution. So if anybody's watching, just listen and just keep listening, because there's more. And although we're halfway through, but there's more. So here's a big one for folks who just got laid off, or pushed out of work. What's the first mindset shift that they need before they make their next move?
Okay, so I say, give yourself, time to analyze it. And it's easy to feel like sorry for yourself. I'm not saying that's a bad thing at all, because I've been made redundant myself before. I know how it's like to lose a job. And I would say just be gentle with yourself, or I would recommend, this is a concept which I talk about I'm just thinking about, is it in Be Happy, the green room. So I explained to viewers what the green room is. So green room is a concept which I came up with years ago. And what it means is, for example, on film sets and TV shows, how the actors go into green rooms in between scenes Think
Right.
about life like that. So
Yeah.
something dramatic happens. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be just a case you might be at some sort of crossroads or maybe
Mhm.
feel a bit frustrated. So what I'm saying is go into that green room, that space, take some time out. Don't think about, oh, I lost my job too much. Of course, it's going to be there, the residual feeling. And step away and do something else, be gentle with yourself. My late mother used to say sometimes, when people stress, have a slice of cake. I know it might not be the most
I like
obvious thing, but in other words, give yourself love is, what I'm saying there. So give yourself some compassion because, this is something which is out of your control, and be gentle for yourself. And then what I do is come back to it, so maybe leave it maybe a few days to digest, because it's a shock to your system. It's
Mhm.
a little bit like the graph which people might hear about the stages of grief, where you go through different stages, and then anger's one, and then afterwards take a breath. And then what I always say with things like this or life in general, then you can start then taking things in little micro steps, like, okay, so what do I want to do next? And it could be a question: do you want to take a little bit of a break, or maybe you can't, depending on your financial circumstance. Maybe talk to people in your network. But
Mhm.
what I would say firstly is don't jump and say, okay, I need to go and look for another job, because sometimes when these things happen, it's like an opportunity to have a little bit of reflection to see where you are. So where are
Mhm.
you happy in your job? Find out, are you going to get some sort of severance pay? Because that could be really nice buffer to have a bit of time out, because I've done it before. I was made redundant, had a really good, package. And then that was one of the times when I went off traveling for 2 months. And then that's, early on when I was sharing, then I came back, decided to do contracting.
Mhm.
And then, but I say, number one, take some time out, give yourself compassion. Number
Mhm.
two, then you'd be thinking about, okay, what is it I want to do? Do I want to return to similar work? Do I want to do something different? Do I want to maybe downsize, for example? So say for example, if you are over 50, your children are grown up or in college, or maybe you might need to still be helping them with that. Then maybe you might think, okay, I'm in this big house, I always wanted to travel. Maybe you might think about downsizing,
Mhm.
and because you've got lower cost. Maybe you could do stuff which you always wanted to do, like traveling, for example, or maybe keep that house, rent it out. So do you see what I'm sharing here, Tanya? You could take it in different steps, but I always say never. Oh, and I don't like to use the word never, say word never, but one of the best tips is not to do things in haste. Remember earlier on I said I, sold my car, and
Mhm.
then I rushed off, and then later I was thinking, oh, really I needed just some time out, etc. So don't
I like.
rush. And then the next stage is use a tool like my Reinvention Navigator, plug into it, and you say where you are now, and then you start having that conversation about dialogue and having a look at what you can do.
Yes.
And then I would say, look at your skills. You don't
Mhm.
necessarily have to go back into the same industry,
Right.
because another reality in terms of what's happening in the world now is the whole work, industry has changed a lot. I was talking about this years ago, going back to 2018, where I said in an article how we shifted more to age of service. It's
Mm.
maybe something which you enjoy doing. It depends on your circumstances. You might be able to start a side hustle. Maybe
Right.
you're very good at baking. I know a lady accountant years ago, he was on maternity and she wanted to make extra money, and she's very good baking. She was baking banana bread and selling it to this bakery in her neighborhood, and she's making money. So it doesn't
Amazing.
have to be, white collared type of jobs.
Nope. It could be your skill or your talent that nobody knew you even had. I mean,
Yeah,
that's what people, this is what the kicker that, so you have a background, you have a law education. Some people
yeah,
don't have, so they're thinking like, oh, well, what am I going to do? There is
yeah,
something that you do better than anybody else does. Now,
yeah.
maybe it could be you are the best cleaner around. So you start your own cleaning business. I'm just
Yeah.
saying. And that, by the way, they get minimum $60 per room, just to let you know. That's the last I checked, like 10 years ago. They might get more now. So
Yeah.
I'm just saying that don't overlook your eye at things that you know you're great at, or
Yes.
things you enjoy doing. You know, if you enjoy doing, I'm making this up. What is it? If you enjoy knitting and crocheting,
Yeah.
and you make these great baby blankets, hello, maybe during
Yeah.
Christmas you make up a bunch and you go to all the Christmas markets.
Yeah,
Just
it's true. And I
yeah.
know of a lady whose grandmother was very good at sewing, and she sewed to these big departmental stores, custom made, sort of
Wow.
like woolen items.
Yeah. I mean,
Or
there is so many ways to earn a living today, or reinvent yourself, I'll say, because people
yeah,
think I don't have an education, I dropped out of school, or I couldn't afford college, or they may have a degree and they're totally not, like I know someone went to law school and they couldn't stand it, so they dropped out. They're lucky that they can usually get a job in 5 seconds because everybody wants to learn on the team, right?
yeah,
So that's a thing. That is a thing. But I don't want the person who doesn't have those skills, who may not be as sounding as NYU or Harvard as other people. That doesn't mean nothing. That means nothing. It's all about your attitude. It's all about finding your gift and your talent, and then answering the question, how can I be of service?
yes. Age of
That's it.
service. That's my phrase. So
You said it. Yeah, you said it. Everything's about service. What can you provide that nobody else can provide? That's it.
yeah,
It's so simple. You cook well. Maybe you make the best vegan sandwiches in the world. Boom. What's her name? Slutty vegan. The little the
yeah,
girl who started. She's like a billion millionaire now, and she started in her kitchen. Like really. I mean,
yeah,
who would have thought? I personally don't think it's healthy for you, but if you get the concept, it's this girl said, I'm not going to eat meat, and I'm going to make sure my friends have something still that looks good and tastes good. Okay, it's a thing. Guess what? It's all over. She's got chains everywhere, and she said that was just a fly dream.
yeah,
So there's no excuse. You have to like, that's why I like your app too as well. You have to evaluate people. You have them evaluate themselves, because that's really what's going to give you a gauge of where you should be. So you might, there's some sites that may do a full assessment as well, like where you find out what your gift is, because some people don't have no clue at all. They have no clue, and this will ask you things like, when I like planting flowers, I like designing clothes, I like wearing clothes, actually the silliest things, but at the end, it finds out what you really, really have passion for.
yeah. Because that's true, Tanya. Because I know lady's done really well. She's got a very good 6-figure business selling flowers, and she was a marketing executive. So yeah, that's something for people to keep in mind, and especially the human side, because I know there's a sphere about the whole AI, human side.
Well, I'm gonna get into that. I didn't get to that one yet. I'm gonna ask about that one. That's a major one. I have to ask that one.
Yeah.
What part of starting over surprised you the most in a good way,
though? I feel like I've done so many. It's nice, because I think when you start over, it gives you opportunity. You get surprised about what skills you have, or if it's like a business, it sort of like gives you opportunity to test things. One of the things I recommend is to identify, of course, where your strengths and weaknesses are, and then get the support. And I keep bringing up AI, but AI, what I like about AI, one of the positives is, I think one of the big things is it's helped to bridge the gap. It's made things a bit easier, whereby sometimes you might have to talk to someone outside externally. You might have a limited budget, for example, and you can ask questions. So it could be good at guiding you whilst you are in that startup phase too as well.
Right.
Wow. And I would say talk to people who are doing something similar to what you want to do too as well, because people generally like helping each other out. It's that human sort of like interaction, and like, it's nice if someone asks someone, oh, how's it like, for example, with me, maybe creating or building something or teaching or writing, and they're passionate. So don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Private do a day in a life.
Absolutely.
You've
Questions.
got YouTube too as well, where you could watch, people share a content on YouTube. So there's different sources you could use.
Yes, there's so many. I mean, I cannot even tell you. We are in the only good thing about modern technology, it's going to also be the death of us. But the good news is that there is no excuse. Even if like you can't write code, there are apps to make your own app now. Like you don't even have to write code. I'm not saying it's going to be good on the back end, but at least now you can actually see your vision come to life. There's no excuse. If you can't figure out how to write something, if you can't figure out whatever, anything you want, if you know how to just get in that search bar, man, there's no excuse. It's crazy how many resources we actually have as human beings. And we're very blessed in the UK, in America, in certain areas where we actually have massive resources. I know places that have none. They can't figure this out. This is a problem. So take advantage of the fact that you're in America, or that you're in probably UK, maybe France. I can't think of any other countries right now. There's other ones. All those places that have resources that you can use YouTube, that you're not censored to go and Google something. Take advantage of it. It's so. When I tell you, this is the one thing you can sit down and play with, and there is no mistake. Right? There used to be back in the day, you type the wrong thing and it's deleted. Like, oh my God, what happened? Now it's always a way to get back. Like, so just sit down and figure out on YouTube, how do I make a calendar? I mean, whatever it is, and something's going to come out. But what you don't do is sit around saying, "Woe is me. I just turned 50 and now I have nothing to do. My husband's left, my kids are gone, and I'm sitting here looking at the walls." Like, that's not what you do, because your kids will have to leave eventually one day. I hate to tell you. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes spouses don't stay around forever. Sometimes your best friends don't stay around forever. What are you doing for yourself?
Yeah.
What are you doing to improve yourself as a human being? Because you're here for an experience, and I'm sure it's not just to sit in your living room. Now, some people might like that. So, I mean, if that's what you like, then go for it. Maybe you have another gift that there is a gift of silence. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Anyway, so I meant to go on.
So you talk about vibe coding there, won't you, Tanya? How you don't have to be a coder. Vibe coding school.
Yeah. There
nice
are some
vibe.
Yeah. So if someone's scared that they're too late, I'm too old or this or that, what would you tell them? Just you and them, no audience. What would you tell them right now? They said, "Sophia, I don't know what to do. I'm really scared because I don't have any skills. I don't know anybody. Like, I don't know what to do."
I would say that, it's not too late.
Mm-hmm.
You could do it, at your own pace.
Mm-hmm.
Find, you could find a suitable course online, or maybe have like one-to-one coaching. How I would ask them, like, what they're interested in. So say for someone who's 55, who wants to create a recipe book, for example, and you have like tools, for example, like Canva. You've got different sorts of AI, like Perplexity, Claude, for example, which you could use. But what I would do is I would break it down into different parts. So get them comfortable asking questions, talk about prompting, or give them like examples, give them prompts to start off with. For example, like, help me create a layout. Or no, let me go back. I'll ask them to say, "I'm interested in doing a recipe book for Bayesian cooking." I say Bayesian. Yeah, I'm half Bayesian.
Being biased, aren't you?
Yeah, my dad's side.
Carl Yard, a friend of mine.
Yeah.
You got permission.
I'm interested in doing that. Then get them comfortable, like asking questions. But I will always start on a foundation type of level. So explain what AI is, especially to do with using it, to ask questions. I would encourage them to look at videos or maybe find people doing something similar. Because I've
Yeah, there's
seen it
free
online, for
classes.
example, YouTube, a
Yes.
woman who's over 50, who I think she doesn't have a home and she just spends her life living on cruises. You can look it
But
up here in the
I heard
audience.
that. I heard
Yeah,
about this.
great.
It's cheaper than
Yeah,
rent. Yeah. A lot
yeah.
of seniors are doing that too. I heard
Yes,
that's
you see making money from cruises. So you see, it could be fun, going online,
I
Googling,
mean,
YouTube, watching, and that shows you that you can do that. So I recommend they do stuff like that. Go on YouTube. YouTube
yes,
is a great source. I think I
yes.
should be paid, be receiving sponsorship, something like that for mentioning YouTube. Time for this conversation, but that's what I would do. I would, talk to them and say that it's never too late. Because going back to my teaching background, I would meet people all different ages, and I asked them, number one, I should have said this in the beginning, like, what's your main, what's your number one go? And it's, for example, that lady wants to have a Bayesian cooking book. And I go, okay. And if you want help or looking at for inspiration, go on YouTube. And then I would teach them, about the basics of how to use AI. And then I might show them, for example, how they could use Canva, maybe watch videos on how to use Canva, do things step by step. So I think that's the thing. Remember that you don't have to do everything in all one go, just break it down. But number one, I ask them, what is it that you want to do? And just take it from there, because it's interest which keeps people going. It keeps them motivated too as well. It's a bit like a young, person, or 5-year-old or 6-year-old, or let's take, for example, a person has, I'm just thinking top of my head, they've got dyslexia, for example. You have the young student, you look and, talk about what their interests are. That's how you make them feel comfortable in whatever they're doing or starting. I hope that helps.
Yes, no, it does. What was I going to say? So speaking of what you talked about AI, everybody's scared of AI coming for their jobs, or worse, which is true, the data centers are destroying the environment. So do we learn to use it and stay like in the game, or is this like might as well enjoy the ride moments? What's your real take on it?
My real take on it is that AI, artificial intelligence. So years and years and years ago, I was thinking, oh, this is not a good thing, artificial intelligence, landing, because I was thinking about, remember the movies of, remember Terminator movie? Was it late 80s or early
Yes.
90s, about what happened, how the
Terminator.
robots took the world? Remember Arnold Schwarzenegger?
Yeah,
Arnold
late
Schwarzenegger.
80s, I want to say. I want to
Yeah,
say
was it
that.
late 80s? Or maybe someone in the comment might say where it is. But anyway, I remember you heard the story, it's science fiction of robots taking over and, destroying the earth, etc. And going back to AI, yes, I'm answering your question to do with anxiety of AI, because that's what you're asking me, Tanya, is that how I look at it is, there's lots of changes which goes on in life. When we look at like invention of light, for example, I got electricity shining, and years ago it was a candle. The point I'm making is that you're always going to have progress in technology, and it's almost like a double sword. So technology could be beneficial to us. The other side is it could destroy us, but it's all to do with how us as human being, act, with this information or technology. Take the atomic bomb, for example. That energy, that's not very good. How you could create something which could cause mass destruction, for example. I'm known to being a bit extreme, but I'm just, showing the example of, the good and bad. And let's take, for example, horse wagons and cars. So cars are, are here to stay. You can't change it. So I think the point I'm making is, yes, it's here to stay. And the best approach is to understand it, see how we can use it in an ethical way. And in terms of what's happened in terms of work in industry, see how we could use it. So with me, I see AI or tech as my assistant in a sense. That's my. So I've learned about the different things you could do, like generative AI. I don't use, or I choose, because I make the choice not to use all the tools. It's my decision, but then I could see the benefits in terms of using AI, because I talked early on about how it could help bridge the gap. For example, like people who might not be able to get access to certain information, because what is knowledge? Knowledge is power, isn't it?
Yes.
Although with AI, there is certain sort of limitations of it, because when you think about, like, I know it's been a bit controversial recently with ChatGPT, OpenAI. It's not to go to too much detail, the tech of it. It's something which has been built by a company. So when someone's been built by someone up here, they design it in a certain way. They, have limits, in terms of what you can see. So for example, if we talk about certain countries, like for example, like China, there might be certain like restrictions with it. But if you get someone who, who has this mindset where I want to create this other AI tool, which is built X, Y, Z, a certain specific way, then, like example, if you look at who's building it, AI, like some of these learned language models, a lot of the industry is built by, mainly, high percentage of men sometimes.
Yes.
So about who's building it, because it does have an influence in terms of what we see. So when for example, when I'm generating images, for example, I could tell that, this is probably made by a man a certain age, etc. So this is why it's important, for us to participate. It's like, for example, when I'm creating materials, I like it to, be a more broader perspective, in terms of, diversity, in terms of what I create, etc. So that's another angle to it. But circling back to your question, AI is, sort of like here to stay. Yes, it could happen that there might be
until
some
it crashes. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
It's a joke until it crashes, but go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's the thing. So I would say, I would say you've got good and bad when it comes to everything, and I see that with AI, and it's all comes back to the human being who's using it. All comes back to, are you using it ethically, the product, and that's the thing, And one thing I would say to users out there is, if they have a fear about their information, because they do say it gets stored, X period of time, is not to enter very sensitive information.
Never.
Unless you're using like an AI tool, which is
in your bank
jargon, unless it's like a private type of sandbox. Because as I was alluding to early on, I might went off a little bit on the point in terms of,
no, that's a good point.
Is you can actually build your own models, but that probably costs a lot of money. You probably need to have a bit of, better understanding of it.
Yes.
So I could build some sort of platform myself, and call it the SIP platform. My SIP. And talking about SIP stands for single important person. If viewers are wondering what it meant early on, the abbreviation.
Yes.
How everything returns back to you. If I explain that, because it has been mentioned.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So when people finish your book or use your app, SIP,
yes,
what do you hope that they finally believe about themselves?
Yeah, so I would say my answer to that question, it all goes back to what I've been sharing this evening, is that life is like a continuous learning progress. I keep saying, I keep repeating it, because it's all about how we grow. And with all of us, we want to feel valued, we want to feel loved, we want to feel worthy, we want to have a juicy life. But we have to understand that it's like a growth thing. We have to understand that life is a bit like this, a bit up and down over time. So when someone asks me a question, what we want the outcome to be, I want the outcome when people use my tools is that, yes, I can, or, I can do this, I could give this a try, an answer to your question. That's what I would say in terms of my book, that, believing that that they can, try something, give something a go,
Okay.
believe in yourself.
Nice.
That's like the
Nice.
underlying core in terms of the work I do. Because when you say outcome like that, full stop, it always
Right.
feels like an instant thing, and I don't believe that. Instant, fix to things. I think it's something which we work on all the time, because it's a bit like emotions, how we feel. It's never constant like this all the time. It's a bit like this.
It's cynical.
But
It
hopefully I
goes
want
up.
them to
Yes.
feel, that they're worthy. So that's the most important thing with all the tools I create, is I want people to think like, wow, have that belief that they can do it. And if it doesn't work out, it's okay. You could try again, or maybe it's an opportunity to reflect, or maybe reset, or, do a pivot.
Exactly. And that's the part. And that's what keeps people in fear, is like, what happens if I fail? Or what happens if I can't, if I won't? Stop putting all those things in your head and just go for it. Like Nike, just do it. Like,
Yeah, just do it.
there's
Because
no
the
such thing
biggest
as failure. No such thing.
Yeah, because the biggest thing is
You're
if you
inspiration.
don't try. Yeah, sorry, Tanya, I didn't mean to overtalk you. I think the biggest thing is not taking that shot. Talking about, we're talking a lot about sports tonight, aren't we? But that is a really important phrase. Remember, was it that is it Jordan? Who was that basketball player? A really good one.
Pippen. Well, there was quite a bunch of them. Jordan.
Yeah, remember there was a phrase to do with how, if a person doesn't try or take the shot, then that's like a missed opportunity. So just keep shooting, just keep, doing.
I like that.
Or I would say, as a tool for people, is imagine talking to your child or younger person. What would you say to them? Would you tell the child just to give up when they fall down? No, you wouldn't.
No, exactly. You say, get up and you're going to keep doing, and eventually
Yeah,
all
you
learn.
need to keep going.
Yeah, because you give the confidence, and you only learn the confidence by falling and getting up. Each
Yeah.
time you get up without an injury, you're like, oh, okay. And then you try it again, you're like, I just fell, no big deal. That's like a kid scraping his knee. Like the first time he's like, then he's like, then he's like, it's okay, I'm okay. So same thing.
Yeah, so that's what I would say to people. So yeah, that's one of that's my main core theme. So yeah, don't give up, and just give things a try. There's no harm, and just see things as a learning curve.
That's it.
Because it's like I say, I think I should change my side, my title to life is a continuous learning process.
Continuous learning curve.
And know when to pivot. I keep saying that, but it is, yeah.
And know when to pivot. That's another one. So any last words to viewers before we go? Before we go, any last words or anything you want to share with us?
Yeah, well, I would say that you could check me out on my main website, www.sophiaworld. And as it's Tanya's birthday, tomorrow, I'm not going to sing happy birthday now. I'll sing it to you tomorrow, Tanya.
Sing it to me tomorrow.
Yeah, then everyone will get to see me singing too as well. So got voice. Is that I'm doing a special deal. So for people who want to get my Reinvention Navigator, usually it's £47, but just for this month, you can get it for £27. So you get £20 off.
Okay.
And then also, if you would like to inquire about working with me one-to-one on a clarity session. So say, for example, if you're at a crossroad, or we want to have a change, or you want to try something else, have a clarity call, I'm doing it for 50% of the usual price just for this month.
Oh, that's
so nice. I think, Tanya, you have the code. You want to put it in. So for the 20% off, it's Tanya B-Day, the birthday.
Tanya's birthday.
And then you've got the SIP service provider, where Reinvention Navigator is.
Wait a minute. Let me see if I can get it right. Here we go. Let's see if I can snag it. Okay, guys, give me a second. I'm going to snag it in the comment box. Oh, no.
Well, what you can do, everyone, is you could reach out to me on Facebook, Sophia Husbands, or send like a message via my website, and I could share the link with you. You could say, I was watching Tanya's show. on the town.
Oh, wait.
And I'll provide you with discount codes.
Mm-hmm. There you go. Yes. And I'm going to put it in the YouTube description of how to reach Sophia as well. That way it makes it easier. If I missed anything, you know where to find it. Let me see which one, because I can't see these small letters and I always look crazy.
Yeah, it's okay. What I do is go to my website, so it shows my title, and go to contact me. Alternatively, if you're on Facebook, you can find me on Facebook and send me a private message.
Yes. So thank you so much for taking the time with us. I want to say a big happy birthday to Frank Accasetti. It's his birthday.
Yeah, of course, Frank.
Happy birthday, Frank. So if you're ever in London at the Portobello Market, go by and say hello to Frank for us. Happy birthday.
Yeah, Frank is so cool.
Yes,
and I'm not dressed like Frank today.
We love Frank. We love him and his cat.
Yeah, Frank is so cool.
He is. And I'll be honest, big shout out. Thank you to DJ Joey. Pietro, I can never say it right. Pietrofesso out of Harrison. Yeah. Thank you so much for all the lovely stars that you've been giving, and thank you for buying Sophia's book. I promise you will learn something. You will figure something out in there. I appreciate you for supporting artists and people who are just trying to make life better for other people. So appreciate you, and thank you guys for watching. Grandma Norma, I see some of you Thought Poet. Thank you.
And if you have any questions, I come back to the questions, everyone. So I do that. So if we
you can go on my page and leave it. You can go on her page and leave it, and I'll put and tag her, and she'll come back to answer the question. Anything you need.
Yeah, I will.
We got you.
I'll share the link there too as well. So don't worry, everyone. You got to the end of February. I'm a bit of a sentimental stone, so I do that. I get very generous. If people I like Tanya. So you get 50% off if you want to have a one-to-one with me, or 20% off Reinvention. Oh, £20 off. It's actually more than 20% of Reinvention Navigator.
Yes. All right. So thank you. So hang out with me 1 second while I say goodbye to everybody, Sophia.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
All right. Hang out with me for 1 second. And thank you, guys. If today's guest lit something up in you, don't ignore it, you guys. You don't need permission, perfect timing, or even a 5-year plan. You need first a move. Make a move, okay? Whether that's writing the idea down, Googling one thing, or having an honest conversation. Just start, okay? Your next chapter doesn't care how young you are, how old you are. It cares that you actually showed up, okay? Thank you, Sophia, and thank you guys for watching. I want you to do me a favor, hit that like button and share. Someone needs motivation today, okay? Look at, we don't care so much about numbers as we care about people and creating change and people having value added to their lives, okay? So also, I want you to do this. I forgot. You need to see this one. Hey, go and get the book, all right? Make sure you go get the book. It's on Amazon. I'll send you, links are in the YouTube, and on my page you can find it somewhere. Sophia, I mean, there's no excuse. If you need it, get it. You can get the Kindle version or you can get the paperback version, either one. Just make sure you get it, because sometimes we all need a little motivation. And I thank Sophia for trying to give somebody out there motivation, hope. We all take different things. We all need different things. Sometimes we don't have family member around. We don't have people around to big us up, cheer us on. And sometimes you got to cheer yourself on. And this is how you do it. You take what is given to you by people who lived it. Okay. Sophia has lived what she's talking about. She's not just preaching to the choir, just saying, she's not just saying, oh, just do this because it sounds funny and I just want to make $1 million. That's not what this is. This is, I've lived this. How can I help someone else realize that they can actually do this too? That's what this is. Okay. So if you're about that, go get the book, download the app. And I thank you guys again for watching. And until next week, we'll see you next week. Hang out with me, Sophia. Bye, guys.